Hey, what's up everybody? It's November 10th. We're in one of the best times of the year to be hunting, the peak rut. And by that I don't mean the peak breeding time, because that's the lockdown period, as you'll know it, where it can be one of the worst times to hunt during the rut. But we're in right now what I like to call the peak rut. It's the best time of year, I think, all year to be out in the woods. We talked about it on the last podcast. I really like the end of that first week, beginning of that second week, that 5 or 6 day period in there can be really good. So with that, I wanted to go over 5 things that could help you guys be successful during this time. Before I get into that, I did want to apologize for not getting a video out last week. I've been battling a cold a little bit, and I didn't really have my voice when I was set to record this. So we did get the podcast out, so you guys can go check that out. And we talked about a lot of the same things I was planning on talking about in the video anyway. So that said, we'll get into this week. Really exciting stuff. Like I said, one of the best times to be in the woods right now. So number 1 is all day activity. The bucks are going to be cruising all day. Some of the mature bucks would be coming off their first does that they've had. If you haven't seen them in the last couple of days, number 1, it's been warm around here, so they've been moving more at night. Getting into that a little bit later. Also, the mature bucks probably found those first does that came in, and they've been locked down with them for a day or two. So they're going to be coming off those does. They've had their first breeding in, and now they're going to be just looking for that second one. They're not going to be paying as much attention to their wind as they would normally. They're not going to be worried about coming out in a field too early. The number 1 thing on their mind right now is breeding as many does as possible. So it's a really good time to catch a mature buck making a mistake that he wouldn't normally make the rest of the year. And they're going to be doing that stuff all day long. Every year there are a lot of mature bucks killed between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. this time of year. So midday can be really good right now, catching those deer coming out, moving, cruising through travel corridor between bedding and food, just cutting those doe trails, stuff like that. Now, with that all day activity, you're still going to want to sit. If you can sit in one stand all day long, but if you can't sit there all day, you're still going to be looking at kind of with the rest of the year, hunting those morning stands closer to bedding, maybe on the downwind side where the buck's going to come in, and check that for does that are coming in or that are in. And your evening stands still going to be focusing on that food, because the does are still going to be on their same evening feeding patterns. Even if they come into estrus, they still have that need to go out and eat. So they'll be going out and hitting those food plots or those ag fields if there's anything left. You can catch the does in there, and if you can find the does this time of year, that's where you're probably going to find the bucks. So in the evenings, still keying in on food. Number 2, hunt your best stands on the best days. So this is the time of year, if you've been saving a stand, you haven't hunted it at all or much this year at all, you want to crash in on that for the next week or so. Some of the best days are here. So if you got the right weather, which is still important, but regardless of the weather, the deer are going to be doing their thing. They're going to be rutting, but the weather's really important to daylight activity still. So like we've seen here in Southern Illinois, it's been warm the last couple of days, so there hasn't been as much activity during the day. They're still rutting and they're still doing their thing at night. Last hour of daylight, first hour of daylight maybe, but when you get the good weather, go hit your best stands and sit in them. Extend those sits too, like I said, to the midday, later in the mornings, earlier in the evenings. So hit those best stands. This is the time to do it. Even if the wind's not exactly perfect, we talked a lot about that in the last podcast. You can go check that out for some more tips on kind of the wind and where to use that this time of year. But if it's borderline, but it's a good weather day, this is the time to go in and hunt those days. I know we talked about not hunting borderline winds on borderline days earlier in the season. If it's a good day, this is the time of year to get out there and hunt on a wind that might be just right or maybe just wrong, but now's the time to take that chance, because like I said, those mature bucks are not going to be as careful. If you can get by the does, you get a really good chance at that buck. So hunt your best stands. Number 3, move to the movement. Go to where you're seeing deer, whether that be from the stand or on camera. If you're sitting stands and not seeing any deer right now, they're not in the area where you're hunting. They're not just bedded up or laying down. Depending on the weather, of course. If it's hot, like it has been, they may be laid up. But if we're getting into those good days like we should see this weekend, and you're not seeing any deer, move. Go try a different stand. Check your cameras. If you're seeing them on the other side of a property from a stand, or if you're seeing sign of them as you're walking in, maybe you got a different stand in that area, go check those out. Don't waste time where there aren't deer right now. Like I said, these are the best days to be hunting, and it's a short little window, so you want to spend the most time you can where the deer are in the good spots. So number 4 is don't shoot does right now. If you're just going out there to meat hunt and you want to shoot a doe, this is the only time of year that you can go shoot a deer, that's awesome. What I'm talking about though is shooting mature bucks, and shooting does during this time of year is not the way to do that. Number 1, you're taking out a potential decoy. If that doe's in estrus, she might have a buck behind her, or one may come in later behind her. If you shoot that doe and leave, or you go in there tracking her, you're never going to see them. Another thing with going in and tracking her is you're being really invasive to that area. You might run off a buck that was staying around there after those does, and you won't see him again now because you shot that doe. So if you're trying to shoot mature bucks, don't shoot does this time of year unless you've already got a buck on the ground and you're just not worried about it. So number 5, the last one I've got, is be patient, and that's kind of twofold. The first one being, you're probably going to see a lot of young bucks this time of year out cruising. Wait for the mature ones. If you're trying to kill big deer, you can't kill the young deer. They'll never get big if you kill them when they're 2 and 3 years old. So you're going to see a lot of young bucks, and probably some good young bucks too. But if you wait it out and wait for the real mature bucks to come out, they're going to be on their feet this time of year too. It's a really good sign if you've got 2, 3, 4 different young bucks coming through. Maybe you had a hot doe go through last night, or just before you got there in the morning, or earlier that day if it's in the evening. Wait it out. There's bound to be a mature buck somewhere in the area. If you've got one in your area, he'll probably be through there. Don't shoot one of those young bucks. Wait for that big one to come through, even if it's the next day. Even if you don't get a chance at that big buck, don't give up on it. Shoot that little one just because it's the only one you've been seeing. The other part of be patient is don't give up on your hunt too early. So like I said earlier, a lot of deer have been killed over the years from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. this time of year. And extending your sits in the morning to 10, 11 o'clock. If you got to get down, go eat some lunch, come back at 1 or 2, get out there earlier in the afternoon. Don't give up on it if you're not seeing deer right at first daylight, especially if there's a really hard frost. That'll keep deer in their bed longer than normal. So if there's a really hard frost, wait for that sun to come up and start warming things up, bring those thermals up. Then you'll probably see the bucks start moving during that time of day. I know we're getting a lot of reports of guys and some camera pictures. The bigger bucks are starting to move later in the morning. So 9 a.m., 8:30, 9, 10 o'clock, even later. And I think we'll see that get even later and more consistent throughout the day here in the next few days. So those are 5 things that'll hopefully help you guys out during this, in my opinion, the best time to be out in the woods. I know we talk a lot about the end of October, but that's dependent on weather, really. This time of year, whether you got good or bad weather, you can kill a mature buck if you're in the right spot. So especially if we get good weather like it looks like we got coming in this weekend, it can be really, really good time to take down a mature buck in your area. So you've got new bucks moving in too. Maybe your target buck's still there. Go get after them. Hopefully all these things will help you guys, and you can go kill the big one. So thanks for watching, and I'll get another video in for you guys next week.